The atmosphere on the set of The View was teetering on a knife's edge. The air was thick with tension as Whoopi Goldberg had just made some highly controversial comments defending Kate Middleton amid the fallout from recent photos depicting alleged racist behavior during the Cambridge's Caribbean tour. "Listen, I'm just going to say this one time," Whoopi's voice boomed through the studio. "I've met Kate on several occasions and she does not have a racist bone in her body. Those photos were taken completely out of context and she had no ill intentions. The blatant outrage over this is just more woke overreaction culture run amok." Unbeknownst to Whoopi and her co-hosts, her words had landed like a spark in a puddle of gasoline. In her dressing room, Meghan Markle was pacing like a caged tiger, her face contorted in fury. How dare Whoopi diminish her lived experience as a woman of color in that racist institution? The rage bubbling inside Meghan was quickly becoming uncontainable. Without warning, Meghan burst through the doors and onto the View stage in an absolute frenzy. Clumps of her hair were disheveled and her outfit was in tatters, clear signs of objects already being violently flung in her dressing room tantrum. She wasted no time in launching a full-scale verbal assault right in the hosts' faces. "How dare you, Whoopi? How dare you sit on your high horse defending that racist, image-obsessed woman?" Meghan's voice sliced through the air like a whip crack, causing the hosts to recoil. "This is exactly what I've had to endure," the dismissive smiles, the condescending denial of my truth from the white feminist establishment. Spittle was flying from Meghan's mouth as she reached paradoxical levels of unrestrained ire. Her eyes burned with the intensity of 1,000 suns as she continued her eviscerating takedown. "Kate and her family nearly drove me to unspeakable depths with their cold, calculating behavior. And you have the audacity to dismiss the mistreatment of a black woman as just woke overreaction?" Meghan was rapidly becoming unhinged, knocking things off the host's table as her rage spiraled out of control. The makeup artists and stage hands looked on in sheer horror, none of them having ever witnessed such a complete meltdown. "I wanted to give you all a fair chance to amplify my voice and champion my story," Meghan continued, chest heaving from the exertion of her rant. "But you've shown your true colors, Whoopi, just another rich liberal patting themselves on the back for fake progressivism while coddling the racism of your elite friends." She slammed her fist down on the table, making the hosts jump backwards. "You make me sick. All of you. This show is nothing but an ethnic minstrel act that perpetuates the most insidious stereotypes about women of color." Meghan's words hung heavy in the air like a thick fog of accusation and judgment. Whoopi sat silent and still, for once in her larger-than-life career being rendered utterly speechless by the magnitude of Meghan's furor. "Well, I won't play your game any longer. The monarchy exploited me, and now you're all trying to do the same by erasing my truth yet again." Meghan's voice grew louder and even more defiant. Then, she landed her most seismic blow, staring directly into the panicked eyes of the hosts. "Consider this a line in the sand, either you give me and my message the respect it deserves, or I'll take my truth elsewhere. The days of the white liberal media gatekeepers silencing us are officially over." And deafening silence fell over the studio. No one dared breathe too loudly and risk incurring any more of Meghan's wrath. It was as if an atomic bomb of accusation had just been detonated, and they were all cowering in the fallout. With one final look of smoldering disdain, Meghan turned on her heel and stormed off stage, leaving the co-hosts and crew utterly shell-shocked. What just happened? Had they just witnessed the complete and total undoing of Meghan's relationship with the mainstream media? For several agonizing minutes, the cameras just kept rolling, capturing the vacant expressions and nervous fidgeting of the hosts as they all tried to process the seismic shift that had just occurred. Finally, Whoopi took a deep breath and tried to continue on with the show, but it was too late. Meghan's words had exploded through the atmosphere like napalm, and there was no putting that fire out. Her scorched earth rebuke of liberal media racism and bias had been heard loud and clear. The delicate facade of progressivism and representation had been irrevocably shattered. This was more than just a mere tantrum or celebrity meltdown. It felt like a pivotal line had been crossed, an emboldened refusal to allow the systemic silencing of marginalized voices any longer. Meghan's departure from that stage felt like the opening salvo in a war against the white-centric media establishment that she had once hoped to be embraced by. But as Whoopi and the empty-eyed hosts were quickly realizing, that embrace had turned into a vice grip of accusation, anger, and an uncompromising demand for respect and reckoning. The bombardment of charges like rich liberal, fake progressivism, and ethnic minstrel act continued to reverberate through their ears and psyches like shell shock. In the aftermath, efforts were made to continue on with the show and restore some sense of normalcy. But it was a hollow and futile attempt at minimizing the catastrophic impact of what had occurred. No amount of strained laughter or awkward subject changes could erase it. The explosion of Meghan's long-simmering resentments and indictments had breached the decades-old dam of the media's delicate embrasures and double standards. Her words were shrapnel that would leave permanent psychic scarring not just on The View, but the entire media institution writ large. As Whoopi and her co-hosts gazed into the audience and cameras with hollow attempts at recovery, they couldn't escape the cold, hard reality that nothing would ever be the same again. Meghan Markle's fury had blasted through the facade, and from the rubble, the demand for accountability, respect, and a recalibration of the outdated power dynamics rang out. The war had begun, and the first casualty was The View itself. Meghan's earth-shaking condemnation marked the symbolic end of liberal media's ability to placate and silence righteous anger through ineffectual, self-congratulatory performances of advocacy without substantive action. From this point forward, Meghan had made it clear that any media institution unwilling to follow her specific, uncompromising truth without question would find themselves persona non grata before her rising icon. No more compromise, no more middle ground, only unconditional fealty to the higher reckoning of her self-realized justice awaited those who sought to bask in her narrative's light. As the cameras eventually dimmed on a still shell-shocked set, it became evident that Meghan had just manufactured a pivotal breaking point. No longer would she be bound by the old rules of engagement when sharing her story. The media game had changed irrevocably, and Meghan Markle was the unstoppable, furious driving force who had made it so. According to the story, the other hosts on The View were absolutely terrified and took extreme protective measures when Meghan Markle exploded in an uncontrollable rage after Whoopi Goldberg defended Kate Middleton. The passage describes the scene vividly. As Markle stormed onto the set, draped in scorched tatters of studio robing, she already wore a gaseous corona of polarized metacrisis radiation igniting cryoblooms wherever her path splintered. It goes on to say, precautionary Acri shields pressurized around the panicked hosts' table, as Meghan unleashed waves of thermobaric discursive ordnance, powerful enough to rupture hearts in direct sonic line of fire. Even veteran staffers who had dealt with meltdowns before recognized this as an extinction-level event far beyond anything they'd prepared for. The story depicts the other hosts and crew desperately attempting to contain Meghan's radioactive furiosity and intercision distortion waves, which were causing megadeaths per nanosecond across the multiverse.